Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about a 40 questions which is mapped with all the four domain of C-risk, ISACA. Exactly. So by doing these questions, I'm trying to cover maximum content of C-risk. You can say 70%. I already did the same kind of a thing for CISM, CISSP, so I got a great response on that. So that motivated me to make this video. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. And for more information, do check my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so first coffee shot. The question is, let's start with the perspective. Which document is considered the greatest reference for all the risk related information supporting decisions on risk response activities and their prioritization? So three keywords are there. Which document out of following is considered the greatest reference for all the risk related informations supporting a decisions on risk response activities and their prioritization? See, option A is basically risk analysis document. Definitely it is a document which help you to identify the current level of risk. Okay. Second is basically risk register. Risk register is a live document which basically document all the risk. Okay, and it gives the visibility to everyone how to treat the further things. Risk assessment itself is a process. Okay, and BIA is a process which help you to identify what is important, what is not. Now question say greatest. So whenever the word greatest is there, we need to determine which is best than other. Okay, example like greatest benefit of vacation, so we have to select that option which basically cover other things. Okay, and we have to select that option which basically has a higher impact. Risk analysis document definitely there, but that data you can see in the risk register, because risk register is basically give you the holistic view of not only the current risk but past risk also. If B is not there, we can go for A also, but risk analysis document only help you to identify the level of impact with the help of calculation. But on the other side, risk register is basically provide you a centralized data where they talk about identification of the risk, analysis of the risk, and current treatment of the risk. So it is a live document. So that is the reason I'm going with the answer which is called B for beta. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going with the answer which is called B for beta. Yeah, B for beta. So let's move to the next question, because you have to think like a manager and always remember risk register is basically always a centralized document. Okay, that is the reason. And it also said the mention is all related risk information. So that keyword is already there. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, which of the following mitigate some of the greatest organization risk and achieves the most cost effective improvement in the risk and security? Three keywords are there: mitigate, some of the greatest organization risk, and achieve the most cost effective improvement in the risk and security. So we're looking for a cost effective which address the highest risk. So option A, awareness and training. Definitely awareness and training basically address the weakest link of an organization. Okay, it basically address the weakest link of an organization, and human is the weakest link. So you have installed the firewall, you have installed the DLP. If the employee click on the particular link, it can basically spoil all the solutions. Two-factor authentication, again, the two-factor authentication was introduced to address the weakest link. Publish policy is not something a greatest solution to mitigate the biggest risk. And just installing the firewall can able to protect the network level attacks. So we left with A and B. So answer is basically A, because even you have a two-factor authentication and the person called that another person and ask for the OTP and all that, he can share. So by the awareness training, we can guide them about do and don't. Always remember, ultimate goal of the awareness training is to make the employee aware about the policy, aware about the responsibility, what he carry in the organization. And the best way to measure the awareness training is basically verifying by increase in the incident report, and decrease in a security violation. So if you get any question in the exam, what is the best way to measure the security awareness training? So increase in the incident report post awareness training, and because they are reporting more incident, there is a decrease in a security violation. Because before the awareness training, the people have a zero visibility. Oh, okay, I have to report this incident. I was not aware about that. But thankfully, now I'm aware about that I need to report this particular incident. So in a security awareness training, we make them aware about what is their responsibility toward the organization. And that is the reason when they find some suspicious activity, they report the issue. That is the reason answer is basically A. Yeah, exactly. Because if you go by the process of the A, you can see clearly it was mentioned as awareness education training. Okay, that's why the answer is A for alpha. Because keyword is talking about the greatest. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. At what stage of enterprise risk management do we first create a risk register? As I said, risk register is basically a centralized document to document all the risk, and other parties review the risk register and based on that take a decision. So if we take an example of enterprise risk management, the first step is risk identification. Second step is risk analysis. Third step is risk evaluation. And fourth step is risk treatment, which is also called as a risk response. So when we're talking about risk identification, in risk identification, we have 3 steps: identify asset, identify threats, identify vulnerability. And in this particular stage, we document these things in a risk register. Okay. Risk analysis basically where we analyze the level of impact. We identify some risk, but we need to know what is the level of impact. So this is basically where we have a qualitative and we have a quantitative. And then we have a risk evaluation where we evaluate the results. So according to that, we can treat. We evaluate based on the current appetite of the company. And second is basically called as a tolerance. What is a tolerance? So question say at which particular stage we create a risk register. So question talking about sequence. So we have to select that option which talk about sequence. So identification, definitely it's an answer. Analysis, because until we don't identify, we cannot go for analysis. Until we don't analysis, we can't evaluate, and until evaluate, we can't able to treat. So question talking about sequence. So answer should be according to sequence. That is the reason answer is basically A for alpha. Exactly. A for. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay. So next question is, at which stage must we discover, recognize and document the risk in the organization? Must is basically mandatory. Okay. Always in the C-risk exam or CISM exam, if the word must is there, it means mandatory to be followed. So this is a very important keyword. Exactly. So whenever this keyword is basically there, it means we have to select that option which is basically a mandatory parameter. Yeah. So question say, at which stage must we discover, recognize and document the risk in the organization? Okay. So risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation and treatment. Until unless we don't identify the risk, we can't analyze, we can't evaluate, we can't treat. So that is the reason answer is basically A for alpha. Is it clear? Because until unless we don't identify the risk, we can't able to, analyze and evaluate and treat the risk. That's why risk identification is basically play a very important role. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. Which of the following is defined as an amount of risk on a broad level that an entity is willing to accept to pursue its mission? It's a very good question actually. Question say, which of the following is defined as the amount of risk on a broad level that entity is willing to accept in pursuit of its mission. So option A, risk capacity. But risk capacity is basically like a objective amount of loss the enterprise can tolerate without its continued existence being in question. Risk appetite is an amount of risk on a broad level entity is willing to pursue for the mission, because that is a positive. Residual risk is a risk which is left after implementing control. Inherent risk is basically risk before treatment of the control. So let's take an example. Your salary, which is coming every month, is $1,000. That is your risk capacity. And when we're talking about, you decided to keep for a learning $300 as a project cost. So this is basically risk appetite. You will not take $1,000 as a risk, but you can take $300 as a risk. So out of $1,000, $300 you have set as a reserve budget for your training. $500 you basically kept for your food and house expense. And when you're talking about, this is basically called as a risk capacity. This is basically called as a risk appetite. And this is basically called as a risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is basically nothing. It is your current risk. So right now the training cost is coming $200. So that is a risk that you took. And that risk was below the appetite level. So that's why we called amount of risk you willing to accept. But if the risk tolerance go beyond the 300, okay, still we can able to buy insurance and try to reduce this risk below the appetite. But if the risk tolerance go beyond $1,000, we cannot able to accept. That's why we called risk appetite. So risk capacity is basically defined as a objective amount of loss an enterprise can tolerate without its continue existence being called in question. So that's why according to risk treatment, always remember one thing: any risk beyond the capacity we avoid. Any risk below the appetite we accept. Any risk beyond the appetite but below the capacity we apply the control. Okay, so this is the fundamental rule we have. So your maximum salary in a month, what you get is a capacity. From that you have allocated small fund for a particular activity that's called appetite. You cannot go beyond that. If you want to go, you will do all the analysis. That's why all our evaluation is based on our appetite only, to make sure every risk, whatever we have to treat, it should be aligned with the risk appetite. Okay, so here the question was talking about which of the following is defined as an amount of risk on a broad level entity is willing to accept. That's more like a positive. That is the reason answer is basically B for beta. Residual risk is something which is basically talk about before after implementing control, the risk is basically left. That is called residual risk. Like let's take example, you're going for a C-risk exam. So when you're going for serious exam, you will ignore some of the topics. Like 10% you will ignore the topics, but at least 90% you prepare. So the topic what you unleft, that is your residual risk. But you have not even started a book. Book is something fear for you. So that is your inherent risk. So risk before implementing control, the risk is called inherent. Oh my God, so many transactions, unable to audit. But after implementing a filter control, the risk is left. That is called your residual risk. Okay. So in this case, the answer is basically B for beta. B for beta. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. What is the primary benefit of defining a risk capacity and risk appetite at the enterprise level? So it is very important for you to define the capacity and appetite, because by defining the capacity and appetite, you define the boundary. And the question basically has a keyword called primary. Whenever the word primary is there, we're looking for the first outcome. Example, what is a primary objective for you to watch this particular video? Clear the exam. Option A, understand the knowledge. Option B, understand the concept. Under 3, clear the exam. So primary goal is to clear the exam, which cover your K and C also, right? So here the primary benefit. Option A, supporting the understanding of, let me delete this. Give me a second. Yeah, option A, supporting the understanding of how each component of enterprise contribute to overall risk profile. That is not a primary, because you define the risk capacity and appetite. That doesn't define the risk profile. Risk profile you identify. Option B, supporting and providing evidence of the risk-based decision-making process, which is true. Option C, supporting the prioritization approval process of risk response action through the risk budget, which is also true. because when you have a capacity and when you have appetite in your mind, it helps you to prioritize the response, and based on a budget we can implement the control. Option D, identify specific area where risk response should be made, which is also true. Actually C and D is basically part of a B, because definitely by risk budgets, if you map with the appetite, we can take a call, we can check the area, but until unless it is not a risk based decision making, okay, which risk need to be treated, which risk doesn't need to be treated, that visibility is required, right? Because this appetite and capacity is a evidence for me, so according to that I have to treat the risk. So B as a process is an outcome, because C is a requirement, D is a requirement. Supporting a prioritization is a requirement. Identify specific area is important. But what we are achieving here, we basically achieving the evidence of risk-based decision-making process. Okay, this risk need to be mitigated, this risk need to be transferred, because this risk is beyond the capacity, above the appetite. So that is how we need to prioritize, and that is the reason answer is basically B for beta. Okay, because B is the overall outcome we have. Okay, that's why the answer is B for beta. So let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Another important question: which process provide the best information to respond to risk in a appropriate, cost-effective manner? Now, question talking about the statement about best information. Best is a word used to fix the particular situation. Example: the most of the people go to Goa in the month of December, but best stay at home. So best is used for particular situation, and best is more like an operational. Now question says that which process provide the best information to respond to the risk in an appropriate and cost effective manner. So if you see the option, identification is there, analysis is there, evaluation is there, and treatment is there. Option A, risk identification, but problem is that in risk identification we basically identify the risk only. Okay, we identify threat, we identify vulnerability, we identify asset, but we still need to calculate the level of impact. So A is not a stage which can be used to respond to the risk. Option B, analysis, definitely we analyze the impact, because level of impact, whether it is going above the appetite, above the capacity, below the appetite, that visibility we get during analysis stage. Third is basically risk assessment. Risk assessment is actually a combination of identification analysis. Okay, and treatment is basically which use this result to take the call. So treatment is basically where we take an action, but without assessment data we can't take an action. That is the reason answer is basically C for Charlie. And the reason is very simple, is without having an understanding of a data you can't able to treat the data. Okay, that is where that is the best information I can use. Okay, so that you can able to take the cost effective solutions. Okay, that's the reason answer is C for Charlie. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, what is the primary objective of keeping the risk register accurate and up to date? See, risk register, the data what we have, we need to maintain the integrity of a data. You need to understand that, because risk register is a live document which everyone look, and based on that they can take a collective decisions. Now question say, what is the primary objective of keeping the risk register accurate and up to date? Option A, ensure it is consistently available as a resource for risk management activity. That is true. Option B, each control should have its own documentation that includes justification for its implementation. That is also true. That's why we have one centralized document which maintain the current status of the risk, but not about the control. So B definitely is not a primary objective. Option C, projects are completed and residual level of risk are accepted. Again, that residual risk is also updated in risk register. That is not a primary, because it also maintain the information about the risk which is transfer and avoid. Option D is evaluated and reported to management on a regular basis. Definitely true. But the primary objective is not about evaluation. The primary objective is to basically, ensure that it is basically consistently available, okay, as a resource, and make sure we can, based on that, we can able to take our decisions. That is the reason we need to update our risk register on regular basis. That's the reason answer is A for alpha. So it will provide the consistent data. Okay, based on that we can able to take the very good decisions. Let's move to the next question. What play the most significant role in a timely reporting and responding to risk event, aiding the development of more effective and efficient risk management? So what play the most significant role in timely reporting and responding to the risk event and aiding the development of more effective and efficient risk management? So here the three keywords are there. The first keyword is basically called as a most. As I said, most basically mean no alternate. Okay, populated one. Second, we basically has a option called timely reporting. That is only possible when you have awareness, responding to risk event, and aiding it also develop for more effective and efficient risk management. Option risk culture, definitely too. External, internal is a very high level word. Good strategy is static in nature. So the culture is something which build the awareness. So always remember one thing. Any question in the exam talking about enterprise level, okay, what is the most important thing from a risk management perspective? So culture is basically play a very important role. Okay, culture decide the risk tolerance. Cultural basically decide the level of risk you pursue. Culture is the one which basically help you to implement the function. That is the reason answer is basically A for alpha. Okay, let's move to the next question. Thank you. What is the greatest benefit of incorporating business management in the assessment and mitigation of risk in that management? I repeat again, the question is specifically talking about, okay, the question is specifically talking about what is the greatest benefit of incorporating business management in the assessment and mitigation of risk in that management. Option A, proactive manage risk. Not understood the question. The question say greatest benefit of incorporating business management in the assessment mitigation of risk. Okay. So what is the greatest benefit if you involve the business? Option A, proactively manage the risk. See, there's nothing called proactive. It's always reactive. Okay. Option B, alignment with the risk appetite. That is also true. Cost effective control. That is also true. And D say can make the better informed business decision. So answer is basically D. I will tell you why. See, if you involve the business team, okay, they are the one who accept the risk. They are the one who know the business impact value. They know about how it impact the business. So if you involved the business team, you can able to take the better decisions. You can able to call the better functions. That is the reason answer is basically D for delta. Is it clear? D for delta. Okay. Because they are the one who are the affected party. So they basically get a more visibility. Okay. And by this way, you can able to take the cost effective things. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay. So question is, when risk action plan are required to address a risk, the plan should monitor to ensure appropriate risk management practice alignment with. Now question is talking about when you're addressing a risk, what you need to ensure. Okay. Because if you see the keyword, it says when risk action plan are required to address a risk action basically means risk treatment. The plan should be monitored to ensure the appropriate risk management. Okay, appropriate risk management practice aligned with option and risk appetite. Definitely true, because we have to make sure every risk should be below the appetite. Any risk that you identify, you will map that with the appetite. And during a risk evaluation stage, we take that call. Let's take example. The risk formula is likelihood and impact. Likelihood is level of occurrence, so we keep likelihood suppose 5. Impact is basically 5, the overall value 25. Now appetite is basically suppose 30. Risk tolerance is basically 40. Okay, suppose. So current risk is 25, which is below the appetite. So data what we got during a risk evaluation, we use this result to map with the appetite. Okay. Option B, residual risk. Residual risk is something risk which is left after treatment, but the question say during the time of addressing a risk. So it is not something, it come to the picture when the risk is already identified and control has been implemented. Cost and budget that you invest. Inherent risk is something which is coming before treatment of the risk. That is also required. But we have to see is the inherent risk. What we identify as a current risk is below the appetite or above the appetite, because based on the risk appetite only we take a decision. Always remember, so whenever we treat any risk, we see is the risk is above the appetite or below the appetite. So with the alignment of appetite, we take a call. And that is the reason answer is A for alpha. Is it clear? A for alpha. Okay, let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. In the scenario where a new issue arises within the organization, okay, within the organization, with whom should the risk practitioner primarily collaborate to perform a threat analysis and determine the appropriate response strategy? Three keywords are there. New issue arise. Risk practitioner need to collaborate to perform a threat analysis so that they can able to determine the appropriate response strategy, which is called accept, transfer, mitigate, and avoid. See, IT department are the custodian. They can suggest the control, but they cannot approve the budget and everything. Business owner is the primary person who know what is the affected impact we have. External consultant, we can take an advice for the audit purpose. Legal team can be give you the suggestion from legal perspective. So close answer is B for beta. I'll tell you why. See, when you're talking on business owner, they are the one who know what is the impact. So always remember one thing, whenever it's a business decision, whenever you need to take the strong risk-based decisions, so you always involve the business owner because they know what is the maximum impact they have. That is the reason answer is basically B, because they can tell you better, because question is primary, to whom you need to collaborate primary. IT department can tell you, okay, you need to implement this. Okay, but what is a threat from business perspective if you don't treat that? So that is a concern we have. That is the reason answer is basically B for beta. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Next question. At which stage of the enterprise risk management are KRI typically established? Now, what is KRI? See, when you're talking about C risk, we have a three type of metrics. KPI, which show the efficiency, effectiveness of the goal achievement. KGI, which basically portray the management goal, and KRI basically used for measurement of risk. KPI stand for key performance indicator, because by that we can able to track the success of any project. So that is basically called as a your KPI. Okay, KGI is key goal indicators. We'll see whether we have achieved our KPI and all. So we set the KGI, like by what percentage we achieved. And KRI is basically mean what is the concerns because of which we could not be able to achieve the defined goals and defined performance. The question say key risk indicator when we establish. See, when we treat the risk, we have to monitor. So during that time we establish. So option A, risk identification. During that time we cannot identify any risk indicators. We just identify the risk. Risk assessment, we analyze and evaluate the risk. Calculate the risk. Risk response, definitely where we mitigate, treat, transfer and all that, we do that. And monitoring is basically where we monitor the KRI. So D is definitely remove, because there we monitor the risk, right? And that monitor mean KRI we monitor. A removed, so we are left with B and C. B is basically all about identifying, analyzing and evaluating. But once we treat the risk, which is called respond to the risk, and once you're done with that, you need to monitor that to make sure you should not exceed the appetite. And that is the reason we're going with the answer C for Charlie. Okay, risk response stage. Because during a risk response, when you respond to the risk, once you're done with the response stage, you'll basically monitor, you look for the effectiveness, you take all the calls and everything. And that is the reason answer is basically risk response stage. Okay, so that's what the answer is, response stage, because once you transfer, mitigate and accept, you have to make sure it should not exceed, right? So that's why we set the KRI. So first we set the KPI, which basically track the success and everything. And then we see by what percentage we have achieved that, that's called KGI. And what is the concern by which we could not able to achieve the KGI, that is basically come under the KRI. So KRI always create in the risk response stage once you basically treat the risk. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. What is the primary objective of conducting a BIA in the context of enterprise risk management? See, BIA basically talk about the level of impact. BIA basically help me to prioritize what we need to recover first and what we need to recover later. Because if you could not able to recover that, what is the impact? Option A, identify the maximum tolerable downtime for critical process, which is true. It help you to identify the MTD. Option B, establish the escalation of loss over time if business function are disrupted, which is also true. Because BI help you to prioritize the recovery priority. So recovery priority 1, recovery priority 2. If you don't recover this, what is the impact? If you don't recover that, what is the impact? So that visibility he get. Option C, to evaluate the technical vulnerability of information system. That is not a primary purpose of BIA. That is a part of vulnerability assessment. And option D is comply with the regulatory requirement regarding data protection. That is again a part of a assessment. So we left with A and B. See, in the A, it identifies the maximum tolerable downtime for critical process. But what is the impact on the business if it exceeds? So that visibility we need. Okay. And question say primary. So BIA help you to prioritize. Okay, if you don't give the treatment to this is the impact. Okay, so that is why first step is always we do risk assessment, from where we get a visibility about impact, and then we prioritize the impact with the help of BIA. BIA help you to prioritize which process you need to recover first and which process you need to recover later. And if you fail to recover that, what will be the impact? And that is the reason, if you go by the process, okay, if you go by the process, the answer is basically B for beta. Exactly. So B for beta actually, yeah. Because B is basically include the A. So primary objective of conducting BIA is to understand how the loss associated with disruption to business function escalate over the time. And this understanding helps the risk manager to prioritize the recovery strategy also, and help you to allocate the resource based on the potential impact. And BIA help to identify the critical business functions and the effect of disruption on the financial performance, which include your customer service and market position. Okay, that is the reason answer is basically B for beta. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. It's a very good question actually. The question basically say that when consulting with the risk owner to select the appropriate risk response, what is the primary goal? It means when you're consulting with them, what is the primary goal? Option A, to implement the most cost effective risk response. It's not necessary every treatment is a cost effective. Option B, to ensure all risks are mitigated to minimum level, which is not possible. We have a other type of risk response also, like transfer, acceptance, avoidance. Option C, align the recommended risk response with business objective and facilitate informed risk decision, which is true. And option D, document the risk response for audit purpose. See, A is not necessary every risk response is cost effective. We take a call sometime that we have to accept the risk. In that case, we don't implement the control. So A removed. D removed because it is not only required for audit. So we left with B and C. B is not necessary. All risks need to be mitigated. So we have to make sure we will involve the risk owner so that all the decisions we can able to take according to the business requirement, because they have a better visibility. Ultimately, we are the one who recommend, but they are the one who provide the action plan. And that is the reason answer is basically C for Charlie. Thank you. So this is all from my side in the first part of the video. The second part of the video I'm planning to release very soon. So another 15 questions which give you the better visibility. To make the questions better and all that, it requires a lot of time. So my suggestion is basically stick to these questions as a concept understanding, apply this particular concept in your practice questions, and do let me know how do you find this question. And if you pass this exam based on this video, do give credits. And if you think it's useful, do share in your network. Okay. This is all from my side, and thank you so much, and wait for the part 2. Thank you so much. Bye.